As much as we care for the kids, we have to care for our educators just as much, because at the end of the day, what do they say? Put your mask on before you put their mask on. If they're sitting out here suffering, what makes you think that they can come into a room with multiple kids and actually give them something beneficial? Like, it boggles my mind that teachers are paid so little when our futures are in their hands, basically, because they're building the next generation up. So.
Welcome back. It's Too Early, episode 10 of our Black Stories series. It's Lonnie,
Naya,
Bree,
and Nelly.
And today we are talking about systemic racism and how us Black people are treated in this country, in this world, in this society. You know, we need to talk about it. So I guess we can start off with a question that I have for you guys. What do you believe that reparations is a start to improving systemic racism in our country, along with like improving the wealth gap, or like what line of, or are you on about reparations and like the status of it?
I don't feel like it'll improve. I just feel like it's something tangible that Black people feel like that we can do now. But at this point, we can't even do it now anymore because this pandemic done shut the economy down. So it's an even harder fight. But I will say that after reading the interview between Barack Obama and Ta-Nehisi Coates, Obama was just saying how when he was in office, it's much easier, and not easier, but like productive to reach for programs that help the general inconvenience and the general poor people and stuff like that, rather than looking and saying, oh, let's go to the Black community and give them reparations for what happened 400 years ago. Like, it's just, it makes more sense in this climate to do things for the public that in turn help Black people, rather than pinpointing a certain community and saying, let's attack this issue. So I agree with that. I like that aspect of reparations, because it's like, once reparations are done, what then?
Next?
Like,
right.
It doesn't make sense to be like, oh, I'll give you this money, but is there more? Like, what's the benefit at the end of the day besides monetary?
Yeah, because reparations for me gives like apology, like let me kind of do this, like not an eye for an eye, but something that's like, okay, well, let me amend this way, but like these problems are going to continue to happen, therefore there needs to be a continuous thing. But to say, oh, you need to continue saying sorry for me for the rest of my life and my kids' life is just kind of hard to like do. So I think that exactly that, doing stuff that's happening right now, because you can't change the past anyway, so just kind of going and attacking issues that are like really helping us today and that's going to help our future, I think is a good idea, but without being like, well, I'm helping you now, and disregarding what happened in the past.
I mean, I think that in the aspect of the wealth gap, it would be beneficial to some extent, because the reality is that people that descended from white people, they have a foot up. Like, the fact that they have generational wealth already and they've been having it for hundreds of years. You're talking about businesses that were literally around during slavery, still providing for their families and still able to, like, their kids still don't work, or they work for the family company. So if we were to receive reparations, I think that it would give a portion of the Black population the ability to provide for their family. But on the other hand, you give some Black people money and it's gonna go towards Louis and Gucci. So I see both sides of it. Now, if it's done in a way to where it's like maybe they give reparations via stocks and bonds, or like something that's more like bigger than just like it's not a stimulus check. Like, I don't think that they need to give every Black person in America a $5,000 stimulus check and be like, that's because of slavery. But more so like, what ways is it going to benefit the community as a whole? So whether that's when you are born or something, you already have like technically after slavery they were supposed to get pieces of land and like things that actually benefited families, not Like, they didn't get anything. They got their freedom, and that was supposed to be enough.
Papers.
And that really wasn't, right.
Right.
And freedom wasn't really anything. So I think some type of reparations in terms of long-term, like, even if land, I'd be happy if the government gave me a little piece of land to build a house on or something.
Yeah.
So, like, something that has monetary value, but it's not necessarily I can just go in the mall and blow it. Because it has to be some type of, because people would just be like, I feel like if you give them a check, they're going to just look for another one. Like, versus something that can grow in value.
I mean, they always say money doesn't buy you happiness. It doesn't necessarily fix things. Like, I think that it would have to, in order for it to be beneficial, it would have to be something that is a continuous thing and something that actually changes the system. Because if it's like, you know, they do give stimulus or they do give land, like, the system is still a problem. I feel like that has to be like what's attacked, because it's the system and the people that were in charge of the system. Did you hear my voice start to crack? The people that were in charge of the system that are still doing the same kind of things. Like, that's what really needs to be attacked and paid attention to when we're talking about systemic racism. It's about the system and how we can change that to improve our livelihood and our generations after us livelihood. Because it's not enough to say sorry or, you know, here's a check, or, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't even give, it's almost like a rich kid whose parents never give them love but give them money. You know what I mean? It doesn't really do anything.
But I do think, though, when we're talking systemic racism versus the wealth gap, it is kind of two different lanes in the sense of, I 100% agree with you that the system is messed up, and it has always been messed up, especially for Black and brown people in general. However, the only way the wealth gap gets fixed, though, is technically with money. Like, it's the wealth, like the having items that value money, whether that's real estate or land or, like I said, investments. You're talking about, like, companies that literally own
everything,
almost states worth of land, and at the end of the day, that's what equates to big money
and power.
Yeah, and power. Like, if I own this, like, that's something that's tangible. Like, you cannot take this away from me. Somebody can take your money away from you, but it's about our community having things that cannot be taken from us.
Or, like, opening options for them to make money, because you can give a man a fish, but you got to teach him how to fish or something like that. Like, I think giving land and stuff like that would definitely be a good start. But, like, what else, what are some things you guys think that could be done that would be a continuous step in the right direction, where it's like, an example could be like making it easier for Black people to get jobs, or going into lower income communities and opening centers, or, you know, stuff like that. What are some options that you guys think that would help us in the long run, in 10 years, 20, 30?
Education.
Yeah, I think it starts with the schools. Yeah. Like,
it's
if you
education.
look at the public education offered in Black communities versus the public education offered in white communities, it's such a big difference. Like, go to a school that's in Section 8 and see how it's 5 kids sharing one book, or how their books are literally falling apart. A great example of this is Freedom Riders.
Love that movie.
Right. Like, she literally was talking about how they gave all of the kids the worst books that they could find, but as soon as they got brand new books, like, those little things make kids feel like they matter. So when you put them in a school that the teachers are paid less, teachers are paid way too little in general, but then you look at those schools, they are paid even less. And then, so they're not paid well. There's 20 to 30 students in each classroom. There's no time for teachers to put attention on them. And when they misbehave, the first step that authorities take is like, it's
Talk about
or put them in this program that's almost juvenile. Like, you know, it's always the extreme. Black kids don't get the opportunity to make mistakes and then not be they're a criminal. Like, I feel like there's always extremes.
Like the baby girl that didn't do her homework.
The baby girl, how old is she? 15 years old, who got sent. She was already on probation. Yes, we don't know what she was doing before, whatever. But at the end of the day, you should not be throwing a 15-year-old in juvenile detention because she didn't do homework. And that violated her probation. Like, why is that even a violation of probation? At the end of, like, you cannot want to help the kids and then do stuff that deteriorates the kids. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense.
And I think as far as also within the educational system, it's the things that are being taught within the school too. Like, even from elementary to middle to high school, like, I feel like our community and any community should be learning about things that they can actually take with them and that are valuable within their life and they can learn from. I was watching what's it called? It was a series on Netflix. Killer Mike. He has a series on Netflix, and he did an episode about where he went into an elementary school and was talking to, like, little kids, and basically they were saying, like, their dreams of, like, who they aspired to be. Like, one of them wanted to be a scientist and cure cancer, and he was basically saying, like, within these schools they need to learn, like, tangible things that they can take with them, such as, like, creating things, or, like, you know, whether it's carpentry or, like, plumbing or stuff like that, that can be taken with you. Because realistically, if you learn algebra in high school, when are you going to be able to use y equals mx plus b?
I literally have only used it once, but that's because I was trying to figure out how much I made an hour.
Crying.
Why did you have to use y equals
Because it be changing, and that was my go-to. And honestly, y'all, do not forget it. Do not forget it. Just don't forget it, because it definitely helped me in a little issue that I had. And what happens when you don't have Google or can't afford Google?
Google's free.
Afford?
If I don't have Wi-Fi or a phone,
I mean, technically,
or
you could go to the I mean, there's ways.
If there's no library, if I need to figure out right now.
I ain't YMX.
But my point is
CDEFG.
that
I'm just gonna
I'm just saying, don't go through all of that time and not take anything with you. Like, yes, we're not learning things completely that we need to be learning, like stuff that actually truly matters in everyday life. But because you're already going through that process, don't just throw it away, because there's so much I have forgotten that I'm just like, why did I waste all my life in school?
I mean, yeah, but I also think that more programs can be incorporated into schools, like financial literacy.
Yeah,
a lot of black people who grow up, they don't even know the simplest of financial literacy that they need. Like,
or even home ec. Like, I don't understand why schools don't have home ec anymore. Like, it's important. Like, that carpentry. Like, I used to watch Ned's Declassified, and I just knew school was going to be like that. I was, like, so excited to go to high school. I thought we was going to have all these bomb electives. And then you get into
But even more realistic, when Sulan had all of them kind of programs, I would see people building cars, like all that kind of stuff, and then they take that stuff out and they be like, "Oh, here you go. We trying to do other stuff that's better," when then nothing gets better.
Go ahead.
Well, because realistically, like, such things as that, if you have programs in schools, it wouldn't be a forcible thing where you graduate high school and you think you have to go to college and major in English or major in business. Like, if you learn those things from the jump and you know that that's something that you want to do and make a living out of, you can go straight into it as soon as you graduate high school.
Very few kids know about trade schools. Very few. And it's a lucrative field.
But even like Gwen Park has the cosmetology program. Why? And there's so many people that I know that went to Gwen Park that literally are thriving. Like, they have their own business in the beauty fields and stuff. Like, that's the type of stuff. And I feel like we, as people who live in PG County, have an upper hand because it is a more wealthy black community. So even if you look at some of our schools, it's like, dang. But think about in other states where if we're pretty much the top, it only gets lower from there. Like, the school, the value of their education just gets lower. So it's like, why aren't they learning these things? Like, why doesn't every school have a cosmetology program or a plumber program? Or, you know, like, even if it's not you graduate high school and you can automatically be a plumber, but like having them have programs that kind of connect to each other to where it's like, college is not the only option. And everyone cannot do college. One, it's expensive. And two, everyone is not built for that. Like, after being in school for what is it, like, real, like 16 years really, if you started in pre-K, not everybody wants to do another 4, 5, 6, 7 years of school.
You want to know what I think is like an issue in terms of, and this is just my opinion, But I feel like for black children, especially black men, they're only viewed as like their way out is sports. And then when it goes to like school programs and stuff like that, not saying that I don't think that there should be money in sports, but it just seems like if they're going to get anything, it's going to be that. But there needs to be some type of way where doors are open for other people that don't like sports, are not athletic, and that are more savvy when it comes to computers or IT or cosmetology and stuff like that. So I think that that also needs to be a thought when people are like, okay, well, what can we add in school? Yes, we want people to be athletic, but even like gym, you know what I mean? Like that stops, at least for my high school, it stopped. We only had to take like 2 years of that, I think, for like a semester or a quarter, whatever it is. Like, I definitely think that those are things that should stay, but I think that there needs to be times where they open doors for other people that are not the athletes of the school. And I feel like that's what is like the main idea for black children. Like, oh, put them in sports, put them in sports, put them in sports. But like, there's people who are so creative and have different ways that their mind works that is just not catered to in the black community.
But I also think if you add those programs in, it needs to be the idea presented to them that there are avenues within that particular program, because a lot of black kids, they go into sports because that's all they see.
Yeah,
they see those different
avenues.
avenues. So if they go into performing arts, they don't know that there's different things that they can do: performing arts, visual arts, dance, singing,
Performing arts management.
Right. There's a whole bunch of avenues, but I think that those avenues aren't presented to them in the right way where they can say, hey, like, this is something that I could possibly do and see myself doing other than sports, because that's all they see.
Realistically, you have to open the door first, though.
But you have to think that for a lot of black parents, all they want to see is their kids graduate college, because you have to understand, as long as college has been around right now, the fact that black families are just now having first generation graduates just goes back to we never had the same opportunity as white families. So it's like a lot of times the only way schools do give black people money is sports. Like, you have to think about most of the black athletes are in college for free, and that's only because of sports. Like, there's not there's academic scholarships out there, but what about the other people who have interest in other things? Like, scholarships are literally academic in sports.
Yep.
And that's why it's very important, and I'm glad to see a lot of these top ranked black athletes are choosing HBCUs now, because literally white institutions like use black, they feed off them. Like, the reason that athletic programs get so much money and that athletic fees are such a big part of student tuition is because they use their black students to make their institutions money.
I think another thing, just to reroute a little bit back to the question, is we really got to pay attention to who we putting in these schools. Like, there are not enough dedicated educators in black schools and people who care about the kids. Like, and even, it's not even enough, like, not to kick white educators out, but it's not enough black educators in black schools. Like, you may not want to go back and you know, got PTSD or whatever, but it's necessary for you to go back to your community, teach the people who look like you so they can see you being successful and see that you care about them.
So I want to counter that only because a big reason why they don't is because those schools and those counties don't pay well. Like, or if teachers are literally buying their own supplies, their own books. So it's like, I agree with you, but you gotta really be in a good place. Like, at some point people are thinking like, okay, I have to be able to live for myself and provide for myself. So I think that's where it gets to like muddy waters, because it's like, I want to give back to my community, but at the same time I'm $100,000 in debt from going to college, and they're going to pay me $25,000 a year. Like, I can see both sides. So it's like, in general, we have to stop putting so much money into prisons and put more money into our education system. And I think that's such a big part of it, about putting money into education. The U.S. puts so much money into militaries and armies and prisons and everything else outside of education.
And I'm pretty sure if you pay these teachers more for them to live off of, and you also give those incentives of taking care of school supplies, taking care of books for students, taking care of technology and equipment for teachers, especially during this pandemic, because now we're in the middle of whether schools are going to open back up, what certain counties are going to do as far as virtual learning. And also, you also have to think about in these low-income neighborhoods as well, if students are learning virtually and then you have single parents at home and they also have to work from home, it's kind of hard to get those resources for their children to be able to get a proper education when you also have to fend for yourself and you have to keep your job to keep a roof over your head and food in your mouths. So it's
as much as we care for the kids, we have to care for our educators just as much, because at the end of the day, what do they say? Put your mask on before you put their mask on. If they're sitting out here suffering, what makes you think that they can come into a room with multiple kids and actually give them something beneficial? Like, it boggles my mind that teachers are paid so little when our futures are in their hands, basically, because they're building the next generation up. So that definitely has to change.
But how many times have you heard, like, a lot of successful black people, the first thing that they say is, I've had teachers tell me I wasn't going to be nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, I had teachers tell me I was going to end up in jail, I was going to end up in prison, I was going to end up on the street. So it's like, a lot of these people that are teaching our children don't care about them. And black and brown kids need a little more love when it comes to, like, we're already we're 10 steps behind already. Like, a lot of the white families are able to afford tutors, and they're not worried about how they're going to make ends meet and homeschool their children and make sure that little Johnny goes to 4th grade and like that. Those aren't their concerns. Like, there are literally kids in the fall that are going to be home by themselves all day, that are going to be 5 and 6 years old because their parents can't afford not to go to work. Like, that is a whole different topic in itself, this whole virtual learning for these kids. But
what we gonna do, y'all?
That's
the question at this point.
It's about the funding. Like, you can't, I feel like, and it sucks, but everything really does root back to money. Like, if you don't have access to resources, you really can't do anything.
And, like, mentioning, like, it's a whole bunch of cases out here with specifically black parents who are not breaking the law per se, but I mean, at this point, you got to do what you got to do for your kids. They're forging paperwork in order to get their kids into better schools because they know that their neighborhood school is not going to be a proper education for them. They want better for their kids. But at the same time, like, they're getting locked up for 15, 20 years at a time because they forged one piece of paperwork because they want to see their kids do better. But versus you have a white family who pays a school thousands and thousands of dollars in order for little Sarah to get admitted into Princeton and at the top of their class.
We've seen that whole scandal play out. And where they at now? I bet you they ain't in jail. What happened with them?
I think she got probation. She got probation, and that's it. But you have black parents who just genuinely just want their 5-year-old to go to a different elementary school down the street or like 2 blocks over.
I didn't go to my zone school, and if I had it, for high school, and if I had it, my life would be nothing like it is now. Like, literally, the opportunities I needed were not at my neighborhood school, and every child does not learn the same, and they cannot be given the same opportunities because every child's not the same.
And there's a difference between survival mode and selfish mode. And I feel like because, sorry to say, white people, you have had so much more access to certain resources that you almost feel entitled, and that when you try to do something sneaky, it's not because you want the best for your child. It feels like you can, and because you in turn are almost this enabler versus a black mom or whatever mom trying to like fend for their child, that they will forge a piece of paper or lie about where they are just so that they can have like that survival mode, which I feel like we're on all the time, versus someone being selfish and getting a slap on the wrist.
Or even the fact that, and this goes back to the whole sports thing, a child can be as smart, like Princeton level smart, and you could all want them to go to the neighborhood public school. But if a football player is talented, he can go to any county he wants. There's some way for them to write off papers and sign off on stuff to make sure that he can play football or basketball at this school. But it's just another example of how it's like black men in sports are just looked at as trophies, like, to everyone. And not even, it sucks because it's not even to just white communities. Like, they're looked at as trophies by the whole black community.
Because they're the ones that made it out. If they do make it out afterwards, because you have a lot of athletes where they cater to you in high school, then they cater to you in college, and then what happens? Because if you don't make it to the NFL, then what?
And then everybody acts like you don't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Or like you dropped the ball, like, dang, you had so much potential. Like, what else did you do to look out for me? And again, it's not solely on them, but they have so much more work to do. Like, we can't fall into this what am I trying to say? Like, this revolving door of like, oh my life. Like, this is something that it's just supposed to be this way because I'm this. Like, we still also have to do our part and fight and stand up. And no matter how many times we fall down, we have to get up that extra time. But it's not our complete fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, we both have to be adding into the cookie jar.
I think that's something that would be interesting to unpack, and this is more so like a note for us, like for us to talk to who some NFL or NBA bound players who didn't make it. Like, that's trauma that you have to do. Your whole life you're told you're gonna make it to the NBA, you're gonna make it to the NFL, and then it's like you're that's senior year of college. You're talking about hoop dreams, football is life. Like, these men literally train, that's all they do. They wake up at 5 a.m. and football. They have practices all day, and that's all that they know. And even the idea that in college, I know, even in high school, I know so many athletes who didn't do work and just got a slap on the wrist or just extended turn-in dates. And just, like, they make it so easy. And they kind of enable athletes. And then it's like, if you don't make it,
that's your fault.
But in my eyes, I feel like I've always looked at it like that's the people around them fault. Like, it's not their fault because that's what they were fed. And so I feel like as parents and educators, you got to come from a place of love where it's like, yes, that could be the case, but you also need to have a backup plan. I know me and my mom raised my little brother to the point where he plays baseball and he's played it all his life and he wants to go to college for it, but we told him it's a real possibility that you might not be able to do that. And we've always said you need to have a backup plan because that's not the reality for everyone. And so it's really important for the people around these athletes and even like the young, like, AAU boys, like, tell them that there's other avenues to go and get them involved in other stuff so they can see what else they like.
That part.
And that's a personal experience for me because I danced in school, I danced outside of school, and everyone's like, you going to college for dance? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought about it. Started out with general, then went to communications, and ended up in sign language. Like, who would have thought? You know what I mean? But now it's opened so many doors where I'm like, I could be solely sign language, or I could teach dance to deaf kids, or you know what I mean? Like, it has already put me to this level versus being like, well, you've done this your whole life and you should continue. And there's this guy, his name is Greg Whittington, and he went to my school. His brother was in my grade. He literally went through high school, like, star basketball player. His teachers would tell him, like, you know, you ain't really going to do nothing, whatever. And now he's in, like, I don't want to say it's wrong, but it's like NBA or, like, something right under it or whatever. He might be in NBA, I don't know. But he's, like, really doing that. But in my head, I'm thinking, like, let's say that he didn't make it. He has now wasted his time not adding that extra skill to him. And that's really, like, it's just sad because that happens a lot of the time because everyone thinks
that's to save parents money.
One way.
Yeah, you have to give your children space to figure out what they like and what they don't, because I will say, and I am very grateful for my parents for this, like, when I say I did everything, I did golf, gymnastics, swimming, tumbling, like, anything that I wanted to do, they fully supported it. I mean, karate, like, anything. I did every extracurricular, and it was not, and I always kind of danced, but then it wasn't until high school that I was literally like, I'm gonna take dance serious, or like, this is it, before I settled on anything else. I mean, track and cheer, you have to give your, like, I know what I like and what I don't like. And you have to give your kids that space. And Nelly, I love that you said that, like, giving them the opportunity to try other things, because I do feel like parents see their child's interest in one thing and they
They
tunnel
take it
in on
and
that.
run for it.
It's like, well, they didn't. I mean, he been playing football since he was 3. So how do you know if he even likes anything else? That's all he knows. Like, and I feel like that's part of that ignorance in the black community, because we get stuck on, well, that's all we know, or it's like we don't like to try new things, or it's oh, black people don't do that. Why don't black people do that?
And it goes full circle.
Yeah, or even that's
circle.
that white people stuff. Or like, what is white people stuff?
I grew up as a figure skater. That's one of the whitest sports there is. But it taught me so much stuff that I didn't learn in school. So we have to also think about that. If we know for a fact we're only learning the basics in school, we're not learning life lessons necessarily. I know for a fact you learned that in football. I learned it in skating. I learned it in dance. I learned discipline, time management, commitments. Like, there's so much that I learned just opening and broadening it out, that in the black community, that's what we lack. And I feel like, at least for us we know that we can give back to our community in ways. And that is a call for action for everybody watching this video. Give back to your community. Start in your house. Start with your neighbors. Start with your friends, your kids, your cousins, your family. Because that's where it starts. That's where it starts.
And that's a good point, that you really learn like basic values of life doing this kind of stuff. Like, it's some stuff you can't teach your kid, but I bet you that football coach can teach you. I bet you that karate coach, them karate instructors, I be like, listen,
My dad was
you
a
get
karate
me together and I'm just watching
instructor.
the video, okay?
I went twice, and
And that's
that was
okay.
it. I was like, that's it. This is
And
it.
that
I
is
said, I
okay.
can't do that.
My dad taught karate at our elementary school after schools every Wednesday. Girl, I had to live with that and do the after school program. People used to.
And I think also, a lot of parents are scared to try new things because they don't want to fail, or they don't want to feel like they fail their kids because of the fact that they may try playing the violin and they don't like it, so they don't waste their money or they wasted their time. So, I mean, I kind of get both sides, because as a parent, you want to make sure that you are giving your child what they want or what you see for them without wasting the time and wasting the money. But at the same time, it's kind of beneficial to your child to, have that open.
I think people need to stop looking at their kids as an investment. And like, I feel like that's where that mindset comes from, is because it's like, if I'm putting all this money into you, you're going to be successful and you're going to take care of me when I get old. When that should not be your child's obligation. That's not their life purpose. I mean, you should want to take care of, but it's not like it's not an obligation. It should be, you were there for me, you supported me, you always made sure I was good. So
the way that I repay you is through my success, like how successful I am.
That should be natural, though.
You should not be entitled to your child's success, or like, look at them.
You had that child.
Yeah,
that child
they
had.
Absolutely.
Okay. And y'all are separate. You know what I mean? No, that's my child. And I did that.
And the same thing with like college. Like going to college, especially a lot of black parents in the community, they say, "Oh, well, that's my degree. I put them through school.
You gonna walk? Cause I'm gonna see you walk across that stage."
No, you wasn't with me in the classroom.
And if you don't have to take credit for it. Because my mother was with me on the phone sometimes, helping me with homework. So technically, she contributed. But
you're supposed to do that. Technically, but like in terms of like the entitlement to your children's success is just
just discredits your child. Like,
yeah.
And they work hard.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to appreciate that.
I promise
you did it is not helping.
It was a lot of stuff in college that they don't know that we went through, or they don't know that we experienced, or them tests that we took that we just knew it wasn't nothing but an F or a D.
At this point, the class that we took that we knew was just not.
We knew we submitted that 11:59 paper at 2 a.m., but we gonna pray over it. Like I just think that children go through so much that parents are unaware about, and it's just like they think they have it all figured out. And I saw a tweet recently. It was like, I want to raise children that don't have to go to therapy because of the way I raised them. And I just feel like that's
the goal.
Yes, like
that's the goal.
And I don't discredit any parents because it's not easy. Like I know
there's no perfect way of parenting,
and there's no one way of parenting. Everybody parents differently. So
go ahead.
No, I was just saying so.
I just want to bring us back a little bit to. I have a question for everyone. I want everybody to answer, but or have you had an experience in America where you realized that your skin was what disabled you in a sense, or like that kind of held you back, or like that experience where you knew it's because you were black that you didn't get this or that, like, you know?
Absolutely.
Would you like to tell us about it?
Sure.
Please share.
I didn't know if we were going to get another so I was kind of But, yeah, definitely growing up figure skating. I literally started when I was 7, and I grew up in Colombia, like going to school there, so it was very diverse. I never really had to take a look at myself and say, well, I'm different because I'm black, because you were my friend and you was my friend and the parents didn't care whose house we were over. Until I started being on competitive teams, I started doing competitions by myself, and I literally, this is like no cockiness, I would have a clean program, which means like no falls, no like all my jumps are clean, I made all my rotations, everything, and I would get like 10th place versus the white girl that fell on 3 jumps and stuff, and you get really big deductions for stuff like that. So I experienced that a lot during competitions. When I went to being like an artistic competitor, which like more so like a theater thing, I did the whiz, and some judges used to just like not like it at all and would give me really low scores on creativity. And then it just got to a point where I got older where I started realizing like, okay, we all have to wear the same outfit, but like it looks good on them, or it would be like a reverse kind of like, wow, that color looks so good on your skin, or, you know, stuff like that. And it really started to bother me because I was like, okay, now I'm different. I'm having different treatment. Like, I'm always the one that's singled out. And on top of that, inside of the whole club, there was only like 3 or 4 black people in the whole entire club, like over hundreds of people. And that really started to take a toll on my mental. And I will never forget one of my friend's moms, what's her name? Miss Sally. She looked at me one day because I was really upset. It was something we had to wear where I was like, my skin's too dark, like I'm gonna be too noticeable. And she was like, baby girl, when you get older, you are gonna learn to love your skin and realize that all of us just want it. And I'm like, no. Well, she was right. Okay. So that's my biggest experiences growing up.
I feel like mine is kind of related to yours in the dance sense. In high school, me and Janelle went to the same high school, so, you know, we went to all those conventions and, you know, all that other stuff in Miami and Norfolk and whatever. And during those conventions, you would do different auditions to get scholarships to summer intensive at, like, Joffrey Ballet or at, you know, Dallas Black Theater, or, like, different, you know, theaters and programs. And, of course, it's a lot of white people, white girls who are a little skinnier, and I think that's where the different factors and characteristics of me come in. I'm darker skinned, I'm thicker, and I'm black. So I'm in the dance world, especially in the ballet world, you don't really see that type of figure. So auditioning for scholarships, I wouldn't really get a lot of scholarships to the white programs, but opposed to the black programs, of course, I got a little bit, or I would get selected to be in a select group or whatever, as well as taking classes in contemporary and lyrical and ballet classes. I wouldn't get picked to be in the small groups, but when it comes to the hip hop and the jazz and the African, I was the first one to be called, or we would always be in the front row, you know, showing off.
Did you guys ever experience that with dance, like being the black girl, so you have to be in front for the hip hop section or anything like that?
I always went to black studios, so not really, but yeah.
No, I'm just curious because I hate when I see that with certain studios, and I'm like, y'all literally just put her in the middle because she's black.
They try to push the diversity.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did a hairspray show one time, and I had to be a dynamite girl, and sis was up in the front for 30 seconds, and that was it. I said, oh, that's my solo, cool.
I will say that I have always been surrounded by black folks. So, not like per se, but I did notice when I studied abroad in Europe my sophomore year. And I did notice the difference between the, like in America, you could feel racism. Like when you walk into a room with white people, you can feel it. In Europe, you can't. Like, it's very much so, like, everybody is just normal or something. Like, and I'm sure it exists. Like, I'm sure people in Europe be like, girl, please. But I really felt like over there, I will say this, I felt the racism more from black people than I did white people over there.
Wow. And
Like,
I think that's more of American. It's because you're American.
Yeah.
Versus your skin color.
And so, no. Because this one lady, I don't even know where I was at or what I was doing, but this one African lady came up to me, and I felt like it was supposed to be a white person because she came up to me and she was like, oh, you're so pretty. What's your hair? Da, da, da. I'm like, you're a black woman. You know not to touch me.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
But a lot of black people in this country do that too.
Well, that's I ain't never had that.
Especially if you have if you have that pretty hair, that real coily, like juicy curls. Because I get that.
Braids.
I get that when I wear my natural hair out.
I did. I had inbox braids. I was like,
but I mean, yeah, you get it in this country too, and it's so unfortunate from black people.
yeah, but I had never experienced a black person do that to me. I was like, this is very uncomfortable. I want you to get away from me.
But is that a sign of racism
not
or more
racism,
privilege? Or what would be the word? What is the word for that? Because
What do we call them when white people do it?
Can black people be racist?
This is a debate.
That's
I think
a whole
black people
different
can be
question.
racist.
I don't.
I mean, that depends on the word.
I think they can be.
I don't think they can be racist. They can be prejudiced.
Yes,
But I don't think that they can be racist.
there's a difference because
racist has something to do with power. Having natural power over someone else. I don't think black people can be racist because we don't have that. Like, our power is maybe like number 55 on the list.
But within our community?
But
it'll be another episode.
But I feel like, so Hispanics are below us, so we don't have a power toward Hispanics. Black people can't be racist towards Hispanics.
you can be prejudiced.
I think you can be racist.
I think I have always said you could be prejudiced, but after a few conversations, I now believe that black people can be
Several
racist.
people have been like, I'm just
I mean, it's a bigger. I think that's more of a conversation you agree to disagree on because there is no right answer to that. You either believe it or you don't. But the idea of a white woman coming up to you and touching your hair, or even a black woman, what is the word for that? Because most of it,
it's not.
I think
racist.
it's more so privilege because it's like you feel like you are entitled to
privilege
do that.
and ignorance.
I would say ignorance.
Ignorance,
yeah.
Because it's the fact that you don't know that that's something that you don't do. Like it's and it's ignorance, entitlement, prejudice. Like not prejudice. What did you say? Privilege. Yeah, it's all three of those.
Yeah.
So to answer my question that I asked, I feel like I've experienced it on an education level. I think because we can sit here and I can hand and dialect y'all all day, but when I'm in a room, especially going to GW, I think it's so surprising to people, and it's almost an insult. It's like a backhanded insult because it's like you're so educated, or like you're very like those
You're very articulate.
Yeah, those are like that underlying racism because it's like, why don't you expect me to be educated, and why don't you know? Because one thing I pride myself on is knowing a little bit about a bunch of things. Like I may not be able to tell you exactly how to do something or give you the whole history, but I know a little bit about it to where I can have a conversation with somebody. So it's like the fact that I can talk to you about something, or I can call you out on your ignorance. It's like, oh, like you're taken back by the fact that I knew that information. Like that's the biggest thing to me. Even when I go to job interviews and people are like, oh, you went to GW? I'm like, yeah. Like
yeah. What?
Say what? So
like it's not an all white school. I mean, it's predominantly white, but I am allowed to attend the school. So it's like more so like the backhanded, like when people just act like they're so shocked and so surprised, and it's like, oh, wow.
Can't get with it. That's how my experience with Towson was. That was my first time like away from home, and I can't put my finger on it, but some of y'all teachers, you know what you was doing. Like the way you grade your papers, or what was that one teacher we had for when I met you? What class we had? PR or something like that. Yeah, I didn't like the way she talked to me. It made me feel very
degraded.
Not degraded. It's hard to. She was talking to me differently, like, because I was going through a lot of stuff that semester, and I felt like it was just like, oh, I know you're black. I already know it's kind of extra hard, and you know, a weird.
The over sympathy is the thing too. Like the stepping on eggshells when you're talking to black people.
I was like, no, sis, I'm alright.
You just make us feel uncomfortable. Like, we wasn't uncomfortable before until you started talking like
even
that.
like down to like the looks and the smiles and the waves. It's kind of like, okay, like you just doing too much. Like nobody
don't go
was even
out your
worried
way to
about
say
you
hi to me. Like,
Just hit
I
the
don't
nod.
feel any kind of way if you don't say hi to me.
Just don't even. At this point, I'll just be fine if you just don't even acknowledge me. Like when I walk past, like you don't have to stare, you don't have to smile. Like
I need the acknowledgement. I'm not gonna lie, because I be feeling awkward. I'm like, all right, when they gonna look at me? All right, I'm gonna look. We gonna, and then I keep walking. And if I don't, if we don't make eye contact, that's different. But like, if we're walking and you already done looked at me, like I'm gonna look at you until we.
I almost rather you not speak, because it's like when I speak and then you don't speak back, then it's like
then it's a
you
problem.
racist. I said hello. No, for real. But with that said, closing remarks. Anybody have last comments?
Oh, I did want to tell you about this one time. I was in a film class and it was one black film, like we had I was an audio production concentration, but we had partnered with the video directors and everything for like a class or whatever. And this one boy, the only black boy in his class, I think he was the only black boy, or he was the only black director. He was doing a film, and when I tell y'all, we had to like choose whose film we wanted to work on, and you would just walk over to the person. None of them white kids walked over to his film. It was, when I say it was 5 black people on one team. All the black people went over to him. I was like, I'm feeling a little bit of what, you know, I'm feeling a little something,
But now is that comfortability?
Yes.
Because I will say, if I was in that situation, I would go to the black
no, I
person.
definitely knew I was going to him. But it was the fact that he probably had one of the best concepts in the class, and nobody else wanted to acknowledge that.
Now, was it a concept that would have made them feel uncomfortable working on?
No.
Oh, okay.
Mm-mm. No, because at the end I was kind of like, oh, he a little white. But it was a great concept, and they had, and like it was ample opportunity for somebody to, like, nobody went over asking questions about his film. Like everybody pretty much tried to go to everybody and kind of and like just get to know what their film was about. Nope, not at all. So I was a little taken aback in that class, but I think that's the only time it's been like blatantly like.
I haven't had any like super blatant, because I'm waiting on the Karen. I'm waiting on it.
Girl,
I
me
am
too.
waiting.
I'm gonna get locked up.
We're not gonna wish you getting locked up.
I'm not wishing. I'm just saying. Karen, Becca, Sarah, all them.
I will say that I feel like I have a better appreciation for PG County when I grew up, because I realized like we really don't have to deal with a lot of that because we are a predominantly black county.
Yeah, because just this past weekend, like when the police were called on our movie night, it was a black cop. Like, so I had no, as soon as he walked up, I had no concern, because I'm like, I mean, sometimes black cops be a little. Some of them be working for the man. For real.
There's a small sense of comfort.
Yeah, there is. When you see someone that looks like you, there's a sense of comfort. So like, PG County residents are a little privileged in terms of compared to other black communities, because when we go other places, I think if we really like were there and like in the places where people that not for travel but like in the gutter with people that look like us, I think we would be taken back and like be in shock of like, oh, our people, every place is not PG County. Like it's some sort of privilege that comes with being from here.
That's why when all that rioting and looting happened, everybody was like, don't bring that to PG.
Okay.
Like,
Everybody was like, keep that over there.
Keep it in DC. Keep it in other sides of Maryland.
Work too hard for this.
With that said, season 2, episode 10 is a wrap. Thank you guys for listening, watching, all that there. Peace out.